Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora tātou no reira te whare, inga iwi, inga rio, inga hawe wha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Mr. Speaker, this bill here will be referred to a select committee, as the government has the numbers to do so. And there will be a debate as to whether this removal of gift duty will assist or hinder social interaction. But that is only one part of this piece of legislation. It's a wide-ranging piece of legislation, it's taxation, and I know that the Minister of Revenue has been a number of years in this field, and one would expect him to be well-versed, sir, in how the situation or how the system actually works. Because in reading the explanatory note, it outlines that the bill amends the Tax Administration Act of 1994, and the reasons are to improve the ability of the Commissioner, in defined circumstances, to disclose information in the course of furtherance of good tax administration practice. It goes on to say that some information may be disclosed in prescribed cases if it is in the interest of government efficiency. The bill also provides for other matters, including abolition of gift duty, improvements to the tax disputes process, and improvements to tax pooling legislation. A number of minor issues are also remedied as well. Mr. Speaker, it is the job of the opposition to hold government to account. And as a result of that, the opposition, sir, will oppose this bill. And the reason is that it's seen as a tax break for the top 10% of wage and salary earners who have already benefited substantially from the two previous tax cuts. We're told, Mr. Speaker, from the government that the bill abolishes gift duty. We're also told that that the gift duty itself no longer raises any significant revenue, and that implies or imposes a higher level of compliance costs on the private sector. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm all for the cutting out of waste and reduction of compliance, because this is an issue that has always concerned small business. And I remember well campaigning throughout New Zealand as a small business spokesperson some years ago when I was last in opposition, and walking into a small business in Winton. It was a grocery store, and as I walked in there was the owner sitting behind a desk with a mountain of paper. It hasn't changed. We still have compliance issues. And when I told him that we were looking at the whole issue of compliance, he said, "Hallelujah," and threw all his papers into the air. So, Mr. Speaker, while I can understand from the government's point of view about the need to cut compliance, the question has to be asked of the Minister, what is of interest to me, Minister, is whether in fact this might lead to additional compliance costs. The Minister shakes his head. But I don't know, because, Mr. Speaker, when you're talking about trusts, all sorts of things could happen. And there's Sam Lutuinga. Get off your hind legs, mate. Take a call. But he hasn't yet, you see, because he has no answer to this. He has no answer, and he doesn't know, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister said today in question time, in relation to a question, that people were using trusts to avoid taxation. And yet this evening, what we see here is people who have trusts who no longer have to pay gift duty. And that in itself is a tax. So this afternoon, we have it laid out to us in the House here. There are those who use family trusts to avoid taxation in order to access family support. So the indication was that those tax loopholes have to be closed, and rightly so. But tonight, and they will be, but tonight what we have here is robbing Peter to pay Paul. robbing people to pay, because what happens now is that those who have trust will no longer have to pay gift duty. Well, look, the member over there, Sam Ludewinger, he's going to take the next call. I'm going to challenge him to get up and answer those questions, because that's really what the members should do. The members should be answering those questions, and I expect them to, because here are the questions that I'm going to put to the honourable member. And here are the reasons why the opposition will oppose the bill. Because we want to hold this government to account for anything that it does, and it needs also, Mr. Speaker, to justify what it does. And we look forward to what will actually come from the Select Committee process, because obviously with the government, no. I can tell the member that we will be swapping sides in 1 year's time. 1 year's time, so it won't be too long now. But where was I? I was saying that we will not support this bill, Mr. Speaker, but we're looking forward to the submissions coming into the Select Committee, so that opposition members have the chance to challenge the government. And here's a few things. This is the reason why we as an opposition are opposed to this bill. No. Here we are. Scrapping gift duty represents a tax cut for the wealthiest New Zealanders. We're about fairness in taxation. We are about fairness in taxation. And that was one of the problems with the GST, increase to GST, Mr. Speaker. We know that the top 10% of those who received the benefits of the GST increase, the top 10% got 42% of the tax increase, or the tax reduction. And that's not fair. And what we have here, another reason, is that the reality is that this is yet another tax break for some of the 10% of people who have already received a significant increase in their income as a result of tax cuts. Well, that's the case. Well, we just had the GST. The GST issue, what we saw there was that the top 10% of salary and wage earners received more than 40% of the tax reductions. The bottom percentage of people saw very, very little, Mr. Chairman, and that's the problem that we have. Now, politics is all about priorities, and scrapping gift duties underlines the fact that this government is focused on delivering tax cuts for the wealthy. And the government has again justified its decision, saying that gift duty only raised $1.5 million a year and cost half of that to administer. Now, I challenge the Minister to actually table that information that indicates that while he only received $1.5 million a year, that what actually happening is that half of the cost goes to administering the scheme. That's a considerable amount of money. So I'm asking the Minister to front up to the Select Committee and justify that. Now, Mr. Speaker, the abolition allows the various wealthy New Zealanders to structure their affairs by transferring income and assets into trusts and to their children to reduce their tax liability. Not good enough, because what this party is all concerned about, or is concerned about, is fairness in the tax system. Equity for all, and not for the wealthiest. Equity for all, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the fact that people currently spend $70 million on gift duty compliance to avoid paying their fair share of tax is no reason for removing it. And it just shows potentially how valuable this free lunch is for wealthy New Zealanders. Wealthy New Zealanders. So I'm asking Mr. Sam Ludewinger, who is going to take the next call in this House, to get up off his hind legs and justify the abolition of gift duty. And if it's not, Mr. Ludewinger, I haven't finished yet. I'm challenging the member to get up and justify the government's stance, because on this side of the House, we will continue to hold this government to account to justify everything that they have to say about this particular piece of legislation. We welcome it going to a Select Committee, because that's where the debate will take place. That's where we will find out whether the government can actually justify what it wants to do. Because at the present time, the opposition is not convinced yet of the arguments that are being put forward by government to justify its removal of the gift duty. And while we accept that there is a need to cut compliance costs, and I'm all for that, again, it is a need for the member who's going to take the next call to justify everything.